Hello everyone, my name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about Victory Lap, written by George Saunders. Now, before I go into the summary analysis of this work, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. Now, in this work by George Saunders, we are following two teenage kids. They're very young and their lives are very different. These two kids are neighbors. We pretty much begin the short story with this girl by the name of Allison. She's around the 13, 14 years old, so she's very young and she's learning about life. And we also meet another kid by the name of Kyle, and he's also very young and he's learning about life in a very different way. Allison's parents are very, they let her do what she wants basically. She gets pampered, she is loved, she's taken care of. Her parents let her, pretty much all the things that kids want, candy, ice cream, all the things that you can indulge a child with. Her parents give her all of that. Her parents coddle her, they love her home is welcoming, and she is raised her entire life to pretty much love everything and to think happy thoughts. Allison thinks everyone's going to be nice to her. She thinks that even homeless people are going to be nice to her, or the whole world is just going to be welcoming. So she's a young kid and she really doesn't know anything about the world because the world's been comfortable for her. The world has been welcoming for her. That's because her parents they show her like the beauty of the world and how there are no consequences and everything's amazing, everything's happy. Like she has thoughts that she's going to find the right guy for her. She's a young girl exploring herself, her world, and everything seems wonderful and everything seems it's always going to be all right. And the sun literally has a smile on its face in her world, and so her life is pretty good. Kyle's life, on the other hand, is horrible. Kyle's life is, he lives next door, but Kyle, it's pretty much he's living in a totalitarian state. Kyle, he has to have good grades. He is in cross country. His father literally runs him like a dictator. He can't watch TV when he wants. He can't, have snacks and candy. He has to get good grades. He has to do chores. He has to work around his own home like it's a 40-hour, a week job. Kyle, he is controlled. His whole life is determined and thought out by his parents. This guy, when we get introduced to Kyle in his life, it's pretty much he's going insane because according to the rules in his house, you can't walk in the house with shoes. You can't walk in the house barefoot. You can't walk in the house with socks. You can't be in the house with your shirt off. You can't lounge around the living room. You can't be lazy. You have to do your homework. You have to do everything by the book. There are notes when people are in the house, when people are out of the house. There are notes for him to do chores. And he gets points when he does chores. And if he doesn't do his chores, he doesn't get points. And if he doesn't have points, he can't have things like ice cream or yogurt or things that kids would want or watch TV. So he's living a military lifestyle where his dad is the judge, executioner, warden, everything. His dad is literally God in this household. And Kyle literally has to follow rules. The rules pretty much state that he can't go outside when he wants. There are specific conditions that have to be met when he gets to go outside. Most kids, you get to just pick your bike and take your bike or your skateboard or whatever you use as a kid to play around with your friends. You just grab it and you go outside, you go to the park and you have fun with your friends, and usually your parents give you a few bucks when you're a kid. Kyle's life is not like that. He's like a young teenager living underneath a dictator that's his own father, and they tell him that you need to be grateful. You need to be grateful because you're our only child, and both Allison and Kyle are only they're only childs. They're just the only kid in the household in both of these households. and their lives are totally different. And Kyle, he's literally living in hell. From my perspective, he's just living in hell. So basically, we are introduced to these two teenagers, and what's really interesting about this work is that we're listening to their thoughts, their ideas, the way that they work throughout the day. Because I mean, you can't hear people's thoughts, and we as human beings, you have several thoughts per day. And throughout your day, you're thinking about a bunch of things. You are thinking about all types of things, several things during the day, and we kind of get a glimpse of their minds within this work. We get a glimpse into Allison's mind, and we get a glimpse into Kyle's mind, and everything that goes on in it, and how literally hectic it can be in their own minds. So it's very interesting. This is like, I've never seen this done in a short story or in a book before. The level of detail that is displayed within this work to show what these teenagers are going through. Now, this story takes a twist because what ultimately happens is that Allison is at her house, and some guy jumps out of a vehicle, and he throws on a meter maid vest, and he knocks at the back door, and he literally tries to kidnap Allison so he can rape and kill her. And Kyle literally, he violates all of the rules, and he had a hard time doing this. But he violates all of the rules of his parents and jumps the fence and literally attacks this dude. Picks up a rock, hits this guy over the head. Blood comes rushing out, and this kid finally gets a victory. Although he breaks all of the rules in his dictatorship, the dictatorship of his father, he saves Allison. She goes back home. She pees herself, calls 911. The police are on their way. Kyle is having a victory lap. He's dancing. He's celebrating because he just saved Allison, his next door neighbor. And we're listening to them, and we hear the thoughts of this guy who's going to rape this girl, and he's like, literally, man, I really, effed this up. I really did this bad. I really, I did something wrong here. Now I'm gonna go to jail. He thinks about killing himself. He thinks about, we hear all of his thoughts and all of the things that were going through his mind, and it's really interesting because you don't really hear the minds of all these characters within a work. And the story pretty much ends with us kind of going back into the mind of Allison, where she kind of freaks out because she keeps having this dream where she's seeing Kyle take this rock and pretty much kill this criminal, and it's too much for her because she's been coddled all of her life, and she wasn't ready for something that's that bad to happen to her, and it happens to her, and it kind of like throws her world off of its train tracks, basically. So in terms of analysis, in terms of deeper meaning, this is a very interesting work. I think one thing that this work talks about, or from my perspective, one thing that's really that's displayed a lot within this work is how people parent. Because certainly from the world, there are some parents who parent their kids with a general judge mindset, like Kyle's parents who dictate exactly what their kids are going to be, what they do, how they behave. Kyle's life just keeps on going and going and going and going to the point where he's at any time or in any second, he could literally just blow up. And he could just blow up because this kid is going through way too much. He's in cross country. He has to come home and do chores for points. His parents don't show him that much love. He has to be perfect. He has to have good grades. And there's a lot of kids around the world where they have parents that are that oppressive, parents that are that controlling. Allison, on the other hand, she has like the free parents that pretty much let her do everything, that give her everything. And that's not good either, because the world doesn't coddle people. The world is pretty brutal at times, and sometimes you have bad times, bad days, bad lives. And so if your parents teach you that the world is always going to welcome you and love you and throw smileys your way, that's not always the case. I think a balance of these two parenting styles might be best. A parenting style that has structure, a little bit of structure like Kyle's parenting parents do to him, but at the same time have some love and warmth like Allison's parents treat her. Um, it's really interesting. The other thing that I think that pops up with this short story is that um, the minds of these characters. I mean, it makes you think about your adolescence and when you were growing up and all of the thoughts that you had in your mind. Allison's thinking about everything, like the people around her, her parents, her life. She's making assumptions. She's it kind of seemed like she should be younger. By when we hear her thoughts, these are some of her thoughts are like thoughts that, I mean, a small kid would have, but she's like 13, 14. You would think she would be more mature, but her views on the world are very, they're not real. The way that she looks at the world, or her thoughts of the world, are just not what the world is about. They're too childish. And Kyle, on the other hand, his life is just, it's hellish because he never really gets to be a kid and his life is under control 24/7. So, these kids, their lives, both of their lives changed. They're not, I mean, after having the experience they had, they're pretty much pushed into adulthood because now they see that the world, the world has a lot of different sides to it. Allison was this young girl who believed that everybody was going to treat her nice, or be friendly towards her, or treat her kind. But that's not true because this guy literally knocked on her back in her, knocked on her door, tried to kidnap her and rape her and perhaps even kill her. I mean, we even hear the criminal thinking about where he's going to take her, what he's going to do to her, how he's going to make her pay, how he's going to hurt her. So, I mean, that's just a dark side of the world that she wasn't expecting, and Kyle had to be this hero. And Kyle doesn't save her just for saving her. He saves her for himself because he thought to himself that if he doesn't save her, everybody's going to look at him like a coward, like the person who didn't do anything to save an innocent individual. So he saves Allison not to save her, but to save his reputation, which says a lot because it brings up the idea that there is no altruism. Because Kyle, one of the reasons, again, pretty much I would say, if Kyle didn't think that not saving her, if he could have just stood there, do nothing, and nobody would have blamed him, he wouldn't have done it. But because he thinks that people are going to blame him for not doing anything, he saves her. So that says a lot about them growing up. Because Kyle was like, man, if I don't save her, it's going to ruin my life. I mean, he even tells the criminal, you're going to ruin my life, you're going to ruin her life. I mean, he wasn't literally involved, but he placed himself in a position to be involved because he thinks his life is going to be affected if he doesn't do something. So that's really significant. So, I mean, these two individuals, these two teenagers were really thrust into adulthood and to thinking about themselves. They weren't ready for it, but that's life. I mean, Allison, her world will never ever be the same because now she knows that the outside world is not as welcoming as her life at home and the world that her parents created for her. So, very interesting story. Has a interesting point to say, but it says a lot about parenting and what goes into it, and also what goes into adolescence and about growing up and coming of age. So that's my perspective on it. Those are my views on it. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment, and I'll see you guys in my next video.